We live in a more connected age than ever, but also a more distracting age than ever. Mm-hmm. And you address this idea in the attention economy, where you argue that it's not an information age, actually the real currency is attention. I think for someone like me who wants to be highly productive, I think for a lot of people, the question is, how do you harness technology without suffering the drawbacks of so many media sites being so good at
drawing you in?
Fortnite.
Sure.
Anything.
Do
you have any tools?
Solutions are not all that clear. I think they depend on from person to person, because so much of it is habitual. Like, I don't use Facebook anymore, but without a doubt, every couple days I'll type FA into my search bar and it will autofill Facebook, and I'll hit enter. I didn't choose to do that. My habitual brain, FA, Facebook. How do we get out of those habits is the harder question.
Correct.
I think it's really a balance. Like, can a service that requires your attention to survive also be beneficial to you and do things that don't grab your attention? So, like, can Snapchat make the decision to kill streaks because they ruin teenagers' lives? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
streaks is made to grab
keep them on,
continual attention, right?
And have them keep sending things to their friends.
Yes.
What a disaster in terms of, having a kid put their phone down.
Right.
So it's really up to the services. It's not that up to you. I believe that very firmly. I think they have grasped how easy it is to exploit human psychology now, that you aren't really in control. The only things that you can really... No, I'm dead serious. The only things that you can really do are to turn it off. Yeah. That's what I've done, is turn things off. Right. So, for example, I don't have browser on my phone anymore, so that I can't search anything, and it's restricted.
You can delete your browser?
You can restrict it.
Got it.
And you can always enter the passcode to unrestrict it.
Sure.
But I think by deleting the habitual swipe press, and when you swipe and it's not there, your brain's like, oh, I won't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same thing goes for...
Or you're interrupting... Actually,
you're interrupting the pattern.
In the power of habit.
You're interrupting the routine.
Yeah, there's the... actually, you're interrupting...
the cue.
The trigger. The trigger.
You're interrupting the cue.
So, yeah, in The Power of Habit, which is a great book...
Yeah.
What's his...
Charles Duhigg.
Charles Duhigg. Yeah. He talks about there's the trigger, the routine, and then the reward. And you basically have to cut off, I believe...
You have to change the routine.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but before you can change the routine, you have to figure out what the cue and the reward are.
Yeah.
Because I think the example he uses from himself is at work, every day I would get up and go get a cookie, and then when I got up, I got to socialize with my coworkers, and then I got to sit down. He wanted to get rid of getting the cookie part. He realized that the only reason he actually got up was because he wanted to talk to his coworkers and take a social break. So instead, he replaced the routine with, I just got triggered to go get a cookie. Instead of getting that cookie, I'm going to go socialize with my coworkers, someone who's free, whatever.
Yep.
And then I get the same reward. So I guess his idea of changing a habit is keep the cue and the reward the same, but consciously change the routine.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done something like that with soda. It's cut it into club soda.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's you still get that the fizziness, you get all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And people look at it like, that's not that good. And compared to water, that's true. But as a replacement for, or sorry, compared to soda, that's true. But as like a replacement for, or as a replacement for it, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Seltzer.
no. Yeah.
Seltzer's a great replacement for soda.
Not club
It's an
soda.
expensive
Seltzer.
habit, though. What?
Seltzer is very different from club soda, and Schoder wants you to know that.
Yeah. Seltzer's way better than club soda. I don't know what this guy's talking about. But the original question was like, how does someone
Change the habit.
how does someone who wants to work
Right.
not get distracted?
Yeah, totally.
I think a big thing is you need to change your environment. So I think a lot of people see it as a willpower thing, which is the wrong way to frame it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of gurus will say like, you just need the willpower to change your thing, which is like, I guess there's some willpower to stuff. I get it. But I think there's nothing more powerful than your environment. So if you can change an aspect of your environment, like let's say I notice when I'm writing a script that, every time I take a break, I go down a hole of Twitter and then all of a sudden I'm out of it 45 minutes later. Then maybe instead I should go write in a coffee shop and see if the environment helps at all.
Right.
I think environmental triggers are huge because when you change the environment, you change the cue. Like the cue isn't the same if you're in a different environment.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a big thing.
Well, that's the answers that I wanted to get at, because putting it all on the app or the service is, you're probably right that as far as like for most people, nothing's going to change until the app changes. I agree with that. However, that leaves like me or somebody at home who's like really desperate to like, oh, I need to focus more, or whatever. Just kind of like
the
throwing up their
self-employed
hands.
are really trapped.
Yeah.
Because
But you can make meaningful change by yourself, but you won't have like a complete, unless you're going to become like a Luddite and have this phone and like.
Right. Well, so this isn't my idea, but there's the idea of batching, but you have to get in the habit of batching, which is to say, like in the morning, after you complete your routine or whatever, you batch your emails. Then that's the only time you get to check your email. Or you could do it twice a day.
Sure.
A lot of the problems people have is like the consistent, every time I get a text, I get to see what it is. Or every time I get an email, I got to make sure I see what it is. Instead, what you should do is split it into 2 times per day where you're like, this is the only time I'm allowed to do it. All the other times I'm not allowed to do this. And that is a huge help because most emails and most texts do not need to be answered right away.
Right.
Like, if what you can tell your family is like, the only way I'm going to pick up, you need to call me if there's like an emergency. Because I feel like a lot of people are worried that if I keep it over there for 8 hours while I do work, I could miss out on like something really bad.
Right.
Just make sure that the people who regularly contact you know that you are from 10 to 5 p.m. or doing intense work, and sorry, your phone's going to be off or your phone's not going to be close to you. There's no problem with saying that, There's no problem with doing that. And then again with the emails, like do it at 10, do it at 6. That's it. Like there's no reason why an email between 6 and 10 the next day needs to be answered. Unless like you're running a company.
And I think a lot of people too, they have like habits of like checking Twitter all the time or checking to see if they got a notification.
That's my big problem with Twitter.
I'm bad about Twitter. I'm also bad about YouTube because
you're on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm on YouTube. So
I don't have as big of a YouTube problem. Twitter's a big problem. Novelty. New ideas always.
Yeah.
I guess I could explain what I do. I don't know if it would be helpful for people.
Sure. No, come on, give us what you do.
Okay. If you're a computer guy or girl, got to get rid of that habit.
If you're a computer person?
If you're a computer person, you want to use Rescue Time. I can't remember how much it costs. You're going to have to spend money on it, but it keeps track of all your usage.
Is it an app? Is it a software?
It's software. It's on your computer,
okay.
And it keeps track of everything. Keeps track of your use of video games, your use of Adobe programs, your use of the internet, and what sites you go to. And then it has AI, or maybe it's just, chosen by humans, and you can edit this too, it has a productive scale from -2 to 2, 2 being very productive, -2 being very distracting.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything more effective than at the end of the week getting an email from Rescue Time saying, you spent 21 hours on entertainment this week, and you spent 30 hours on
work,
on
or
design
whatever.
And composition or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're at the end of the week, you say, oh my gosh, like I didn't, without knowing it, I played video games, went on Twitter, and watched a movie enough time to be just short of how much I worked. You know what I mean?
That's huge.
And when you see that in front of you, I think that's a great way to just be like, okay.
Yeah, because for a lot of people, it's like
they don't know that they're doing it.
Well,
they don't know the hours.
Bleeding time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a thing for a while. It became like it was a lot of upkeep, but I had this like really rigorous time management system where like I tracked
Didn't last.
It lasted for like several months.
That's good.
It actually lasted a while. Because especially when I first started like doing YouTube, I was determined not to get sidetracked. So I would track
right.
until I basically, from the time I woke up to the time that I went to bed, and I had all these like buckets for like what classified as work, what classified as whatever, and that was totally eye opening to the same thing. And I would have like weekly progress reports and like but it became too complicated. So I like a software that
does it for you.
Does it for you. Exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing is how does it know if, like, let's say I have Adobe open, but I'm not using it?
It's only use
active
hours.
Windows.
It's only active. It knows. It knows that you're being active.
Great.
So, like, you could have Spotify open and Adobe open, but it's only going to keep track of Adobe if Spotify's playing in the background.
Right. And if I go and I click on like, I'm going to go check Twitter or whatever, and I still have Adobe on the other screen, it's going to count.
Yeah. So what it does in that regard is like it will measure out the productive versus distracting. So it could register like a neutral half hour where like you were doing Adobe, but you were also going on Twitter and you were also changing your Spotify songs. It would determine based on, I don't know, complicated stuff that for this half hour you actually weren't being that productive. It does like keep track of like this half hour you were only using Adobe.
Now, do they have that for the phone?
I don't know. I haven't used it for the phone. Because my problem isn't the phone. My problem is the workspace.
Right.
I'm sure other people have bigger problems with the phone.
No, I have a bigger problem with the workspace personally.
Yeah.
But I know
it depends on the person. Like I know other people who have much bigger problems with phone than their computer. My problem is the computer.
If anybody has a problem with the phone, there's a great app called Freedom, which is like it's just an internet blocker. So you can go like, I want to be blocked for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. Yeah. It'll sync up to your computer too, and you can do like all sorts of like social block sites. But I like this Rescue Time. I haven't heard of it before.
Rescue Time's great, and they have great support.
Because there's an element of reflection involved, which I really like.
Right. Yeah.
It's passive, and you don't need to be like. Even if you know you're getting distracted, like you're not, because like for example, let's say you run Freedom, and you just want to be distracted that week. Well, you're just not going to run Freedom that week.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whereas Rescue Time, it's like just passive. So it'll report on your bad behavior as well.
Right.
And just be like, okay, you probably should get it together as far as like.
Right. You need to assess yourself and make a change. But like, it is eye-opening to be like, I didn't realize I spent 50 hours playing Fortnite this week.
Do you think that helped you? Do you think it helped?
Oh, big time.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
So that's like a big thing for you.
Yeah. Rescue Time's huge. And then there's another one, which I bet is not for everybody, but it's called B-Minder, which is it just is loss aversion psychology. So it's like if you don't hit a certain goal, B-Minder charges you. So it's money loss aversion. I mean, I think for the most part, in terms of getting goals completed, the two biggest things that psychologists say are social pressure and loss of like money, like losing money. The idea of like having to pay B-Minder $5,000 if you don't complete your novel in 2 years gets people to write their novels. You know what I mean? Like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So
how do they know? So give us.
Well, you could set something as simple as, I want B-Minder to link up with my to-do list, and you can set novel due December 21st, and then you can email B-Minder and be like, this is the hard date. I am not allowed to check this box on my to-do list app until that date. Like, you need to prove, like, B-Minder's that good. Like, their support will be like, no, you're a little weasel, and you're just going to hit the box.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering.
And complete it. And so our system's going to update.
Right.
But you can also tell them, I'm not allowed to do that. And they will make sure that you stay true.
That's almost like a notary or something like that.
Well, it's just it's pressure. It's actual pressure. That's one of the things that people have such trouble with, is like they try all these different things and then they are not culpable. Is that the right word?
Yeah. Responsible?
They're not responsible, and then they just,
if it all goes,
they waive responsibility if it doesn't go well. And so is it, like, in terms of getting stuff done, if you're self-employed, that's a big one. So B-Minder's great. Like, I think loss aversion is a huge way to get stuff done. And that's a good program to use it. And it links up with all different stuff like to-do lists. If you you can link it with Runkeeper. So like if you want to run,
how many miles?
If you want to run 10 miles a week, then you can connect it with B-Minder and say, if I don't run 10 miles this week, B-Minder's going to charge me whatever you're not willing to lose.
So that's a good app, like in conjunction with other
paying attention apps.
Yeah.
And I guess it's really sad that we have to do this. Like, don't you think that we have to like have additional apps to help us do these things?
No, in some ways I think that's super important that those apps get developed, because
it's important that they exist. What I'm saying is, like, it sucks that we have to use them, like, because otherwise we'd like just sit here and not do the things. Like, even if you really wanted to do something, like write a movie script,
right, there's a good chance you're not going to do it.
There's still a good chance, even though you're passionate about that you're not going to do it.
Right. Well, we're just unable to think about long-term goals all the time and keep their weight in mind.
Right.
And so it's like, I think you may have mentioned this earlier about we have hardware that doesn't fit what we're using, the tools that we're using. And it's like the tools that we're using are so distracting and so good at always having something novel, like kind of maybe more interesting than writing your screenplay or, all these things. And so it's like, you need software that's on your side as well, like on your long-term goal side.
Right. Yeah, again, it's the ancient interface with brand new thing that takes advantage of ancient interface.
Well, yeah, I'm really looking forward to like, I feel like the internet is basically like a fire hose, a fire hydrant of information. Basically,
for sure,
you're not going to retain it all. And you have the input of maybe just like a normal drink of water. And so part of that is like, let's lower the output. And I need software to do that for me. I want software to filter out.
That's why video essays are popular.
Yeah. Filter out all the noise to get to a nice little nectar of what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also why it's important to just turn it off and read a book as well. But I totally agree with that analogy. It's like you can only drink so much water coming from a fire.
Well, yeah, I've actually got a better one. because I realized you need a good example for resistors. Like with electricity, something is only useful if you can get it to the voltage that your thing needs. Like most don't need 120 volts. So a big part of all boards are resistors to like step it down to whatever exactly how much you need. Yeah. And so it's the resistors part that.
Yeah, the resistor. Well, I think that's an important point because so many people don't spend the time to create that infrastructure in order to create those points of resistance, and so they just keep doing the same thing. And it's worth spending a week, a month, closing the gap until you're at that point, at which point you can more or less take your hands off of it and accept what you've got.
Right.
But if you never create that infrastructure, you're going to continue to just be bombarded with infinite information and probably retain none of it. Yeah.